You're listening to 10 Points, a podcast with your hosts, Ash and Nicholas, where all the talk is Canadian Highlander, our favorite format from the best trading card game ever, Magic the Gathering.
Hey guys, it's me, Nicholas.
And me, Ash, and today we're going to be talking about a pretty fun deck. We're going to be going into Paradox Academy, a pretty Highlander-specific type of combo deck. But before we get into that, we have our best card from, and today we're going to be talking about the set Alliances. So, Nick, what's your best card from that?
They're following tradition with the past, 5 sets that we've done. There's not a whole lot of really notable cards in this set. So there's 3, but the top one, obviously surprising no one, is Force of Will. It goes in a lot of blue decks, and free counter spells are just really strong.
Yeah, like Foil, for example.
I mean, that's the best one, but they can't all be that good, so Force of Will takes a close second.
Fun fact about Force of Will, Nick, without looking, what rarity do you think Force of Will is?
I'm currently looking right now. I was already looking before you asked, so... Yeah.
Well, tell the people.
Common?
It's uncommon, so you clearly weren't looking that closely.
Alright, well, old set symbols are weird. It's blackish.
No, okay, yeah, they didn't have set symbols, weren't color-coded until Exodus.
Alright, I don't care.
Okay, anyway, my best card from this set is also going to be Force of Will. It's not even close. But a couple runner-ups in this set are Helm of Obedience and what was the other one?
Lake of the Dead, which
yeah,
that only goes in a few fringe decks, but it does see play.
I mean, in those decks though, it is quite good.
Yeah. If you're playing Mono Black Devotion, Lake of the Dead is one of your best cards. For sure.
So we're going to start getting into our deep dive here. We're going to be talking about all the ins and outs of Paradox Academy. But in case anyone doesn't know, do you want to give a kind of overview of how the deck works and what it's about?
Yeah, so Paradox Academy is a combo deck, and its main win condition is using Paradox Engine and a bunch of artifacts to basically just keep playing spells until you find some way to kill them. And the Academy part comes from, of course, Tolarian Academy, which is one of the deck's strongest ways of producing fast mana. But yeah, generally you're trying to go, the first few turns are playing a bunch of mana rocks, and then you play a Paradox Engine, and then you just keep casting spells until you kill them with something.
Yeah, it and eggs both kind of fall into this weird category, and honestly, so does Cradlehoof to an extent, where these density-based combo decks, their kind of game plan is play a bunch of stuff, and then get mana to do a bunch of stuff with that bunch of stuff, and then draw cards, and then eventually your stuff just kind of works together and they die. Yeah,
Paradox Academy, I mean, with a few exceptions, but for the most part, it doesn't really care what your opponent's doing. It's just I'm gonna keep doing my plan and hope to kill you before you either kill me or land a Collector Roof.
Yeah, or disrupt me too much.
Yeah.
So we kind of have in our order here that we're going to talk about key cards, but I think honestly we kind of do that as we go into talk about the combos. For the most part, this, like I said, this deck kind of works on putting a lot of permanents into play that eventually just work together to kill your opponent. And the way that normally happens is by a pretty sizable list of different combos that can just land on the board together. Some of them are 2 cards, some of them are 6 cards for it to actually work. Eggs is a little more guilty of having a lot of weird cards to go together in a combo. Paradox can do it with about 3 to 5 cards most of the time.
Yeah, but the thing about these decks is you're churning through your deck really quickly, using a lot of card draw and stuff. So it's not terribly unreasonable to get these, especially since you're playing so many artifact tutors, and almost all, if not all, of these combos are completely artifact based.
Yeah, the one other thing about it is, some of the combos actually do use Tolarian Academy, but another thing that makes this deck work so well is the fact that all of these cards that are these combo pieces do something else as they're like while they're getting you to the point where you're comboing with them.
Yeah. Do we just want to jump into like what some of the more common combos that you'll see are?
Yeah.
So the first one is probably like the simplest. It's just Basalt Monolith and Rings of Bright Hearth. Just make infinite mana and then either use like a Walking Ballista, which is one of the key cards that goes in this deck, or like really any of your things. You're just like producing so much mana that if you have infinite mana, or like there's so many things that really want mana that if you're making infinite mana, there's ways to just draw your whole deck or do really whatever you want.
Yeah. I will say before we get too far into this, we're probably, though I'm sure we'll kind of slip up and do it here and there, we're probably going to avoid talking about the exact minutia of how these cards combo. Like, if you're looking to play a deck like this and you cannot understand how the combo works by looking at 3 cards, I suggest goldfishing it and figuring it out.
Yeah,
but we'll kind of touch on how some of the combos work.
Yeah,
but
maybe
not
some
like
of the more complex ones, but Basalt Monolith and Rings of Bright Hearth is somewhat self-explanatory.
Yeah, and pretty well known.
Yeah, if you just, I guess by the amount of time that we've spent talking about how we're not going to talk about how this combo works, we could have just explained it. But if you want to know how the combo works, Google it.
Another combo that is a similar thing is if you have a Voltaic or Manifold Key, a Rings of Bright Hearth, and a Mana Vault or Grim Monolith, you can actually make infinite mana that way as well. Really, Rings of Bright Hearth is it goes with a lot of combos.
It does not work with Mana Vault though, only Basalt Monolith, because Mana Vault's only upkeep. Not Basalt Monolith, Grim Monolith. It works with Grim Monolith, but not...
No, you're using the key to untap it.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm dumb.
You're thinking of Power Artifact.
Yeah.
Which is not in either of our lists. I've never used the Power Artifact build, but I just don't like the fact that Power Artifact is not an artifact. And so it just is much harder to get value out of it before you're comboing, and then it's only combos with like 1 card in your deck anyway. Well, 2, I guess. But anyway, aside from that, you want to skip to the bottom combo?
Yeah. Alright, so Sensei's Divining Top is probably one of...
a fair and balanced Magic card.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Which usually it's like somewhat at least fair-ish. But in Paradox, there are just so many different combos that you can assemble using Top. One of them is Top plus Paradox plus either Voltaic Key or the other key.
Manifold Key?
Yeah, Manifold Key. You can untap... we're not going to explain the combos, I guess. But that's one of the more common combos. You can also do the same thing with Rings of Bright Hearth. And you can also use... what's it called? What's the... Oh, Mystic Forge. Mystic Forge, Paradox Academy, or Paradox Engine, and Sensei's Divining Top.
Now, a notable part of that is you need to have enough mana rocks to generate the appropriate amount of mana for a given combo. In that line.
That is pretty relevant, but it's one of those things where if you don't have enough mana rocks to get to that combo, you probably don't, like, it's probably way too late for you anyway.
Yeah, and you also probably don't have those other cards in play.
Yeah, exactly. If you've like played a Paradox Engine, a Top, and a Hedron Archive, not Hedron Archive. Why do I keep thinking that? I literally just said the card and then...
Mystic Forge?
Mystic Forge. Oh my goodness. My brain is
so
now...
another combo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just touched on that a little bit.
Another combo that is pretty helpful is a Codex Shredder, along with a Rings of Bright Hearth and Infinite Mana, or Paradox Engine and enough Mana Rocks. You can use Codex Shredder to basically infinitely rebuy your entire graveyard. So if you have anything in there that draws cards, and you can generate the appropriate mana, you can just draw your deck. If you have anything in there that tutors, you can just tutor whatever you can tutor over and over again, as long as you can generate the mana for it. So Codex Shredder, enough mana. Codex Shredder and infinite mana lets you infinitely rebuy your graveyard with rings. Or Codex Shredder, Paradox Engine, and enough mana per iteration plus rings will buy your graveyard back. That comes up more in eggs than it does in Paradox, because you have a million eggs to just draw a card that are in your graveyard. But like in my build, I am playing a copy of Chromatic Star to help with my 4 colors. But like typical 2 or 3 color builds won't be playing the Chromatic Star.
Yeah, another really common combo is Academy Ruins and Mindslaver. Which, looking at Ash's list, it seems that you're not playing either of those, which I'm honestly surprised about.
Yeah, I am not playing that combo. The main decision for that is I wanted to try out some new, slightly more control-y resilient build, and something had to go, and
Why
that
not?
was one of the. Why not? What?
Why no Academy Ruins though?
I'm on a 4-color mana base.
I guess that's fair.
Like I'd rather have what comes up more often is having fast mana. So like I would rather keep the Ancient Tombs than keep an Academy Ruins.
That's fair.
Especially because I have a Savine's Reclamation and the Unending Detour or Endless Detour to get stuff back.
I found I really like Academy Ruins even without the combo, mostly because you're playing so many ways to tutor lands. And so I've had a lot of times where I'll like have either they'll like have killed my Paradox Engine, or I'll like have like a Memory Jar or something in the graveyard, and I'll just like crop rotation into an Academy Ruins. But I guess being on a 4-color mana base, you have to cut some lands, and
yeah,
that's just how it goes. But yeah, in a lot of lists, you'll see a lot of Mindslaver locks using Mindslaver and Academy Ruins.
I guess we probably should have mentioned this a bit earlier, but we have 2 lists in the description of this video.
Yeah.
Well, episode, video, whatever, both. Nicholas's is going to be a lot more stock looking than mine. This is the one that Nicholas played on our last paper tournament. You might have edited it a little bit, right?
I don't think I've changed it since then. There are a few things I probably should have changed. I realized that I'm not on Codex Shredder, which I definitely should be. And when we were kind of talking about our lists, there were a few other cards that I was like, oh, that should probably be in there.
So Nicholas's list will look pretty stock. Mine is going to look a little more unique. I'm trying out a variant that dips into 4 colors, where normally the deck is either Bant or Teamer. I'm trying aspects of both and trying out some new cards. So
Ash is playing some bold inclusions.
Yes,
but
yes.
It's really cool that like that's one of the things about Canadian Highlanders. You can build like have such a different approach to building decks, and the decks are still just like really good.
Yeah, because like the core of the deck is the same, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it can still work really well.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it? Oh, so you got another combo?
No, I was just going to kind of talk about my list that's in the, because we'll defer to these a lot probably. Mine is just Simic. Like Ash said, it's usually 3-color, but I just like really just broke it down into the base components and just went blue-green, very light green splash as well, just like a few cards. So it's pretty much mono blue, playing like crop rotation and like Reap and Sylvan Scrying. I think those might be like the only green cards in here.
You usually play Oko to deal with Collector Roof.
Oh, I am on Oko. No, I'm not. I'm not on Oko.
Could be.
I could be, yeah. So this was one of the things me and Ash were talking about when building the decks, which we'll talk about this more later. But he's on a lot of ways to deal with Collector Oof, and I probably should be, but I'm not. So that's something that in the future, next time I build this deck, I will maybe add some more of those ways to deal with Collector Oof. But we'll talk about the bane of Paradox Academy later.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely will be talking about that. Let's just kind of touch on a couple of the key cards that aren't the combos we just mentioned. Really, the main things you'll find in almost every build of this deck that I would consider key cards are the best fast mana options, and then card draw to complement it, which kind of goes back to the general philosophy of this entire archetype. But like for the fast mana, you'll often see Soul Ring and Mana Crypt and Mana Vault taking up some points. You'll see Tolarian Academy, as that is part of the name of this deck after all. And then you'll also see effects such as like Finale of Revelation, sometimes Blue Sun Zenith, just ways to utilize that high amount of card draw you get, high amount of mana you get. And a lot of times you see a lot of artifact tutors as well.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about all of the key cards, but this is one of those decks where there is like probably like a good like 40 cards that have to be in the deck.
Yeah.
And then like everything else, which maybe it's honestly even more than that. But yeah, like a lot of the like fast mana is just kind of like you're always going to be seeing it.
Assuming if it's the point spread in question.
Yeah, depending on the point spread. But I mean, even like some of the non-pointed fast mana, like you're always going to be on Grim Monolith. You're always going to be on
Basalt Monolith,
like Mox Opal, just things like that. And then like a lot of the wheels, and like Finale of Revelation, like Ash talked about. Yeah, you're just like always going to be on those.
Yep. Okay. You could move on to the next section?
Yeah.
Okay. So next section we're going to talk about is build options. We kind of already touched on this, but I want to talk about the reasons you'll go into different colors in this deck. So the core of this deck, as Nicholas alluded to, is blue-green. It's really blue with a little bit of green.
Yeah,
it's blue with land tutors, and sometimes Oko to deal with Collector Roof. But your base in this deck is going to be blue, and the main reason for that is all your good artifact tutors are either colorless or blue. And then some other really important cards you get out of blue are your card draw. Some lists play a couple cantrips, usually not as many as like blue mid-range decks will, but they'll play like 3 to 5 cantrips sometimes. My list is only on I think 2 because I had to cram more other cards in there.
I think I'm also on 2. I'm on Preordain and Ponder.
Maybe 3 to 5. But you'll also see sometimes you'll see a small amount of interaction, like bounce spells or like unsubstantiate, something like that, to be a kind of counterspell, kind of bounce spell. But the main thing you're seeing in blue is artifact tutors and Urza are like the 2 big reasons. And then green, like we said, it's mainly for the land tutors to find Tolarian Academy and some of the utility lands. The reason you'll go into red is usually exactly Wheel of Fortune and activating Pyrite Spellbomb.
Yeah, which really it's just Wheel of Fortune. For Pyrite Spellbomb, you're probably just on like red artifacts or something. Yeah.
One reason you play Pyrite Spellbomb, besides the fact that you can use it to remove an Aven Mind Sensor or an Opposition Agent or a Leonin Arbiter, is that it also is one of those cards that will actually let you draw your deck with the Codex Shredder.
Yeah, or just kill them with a Codex Shredder.
Well, if you don't have red mana, you can't do it.
Yeah, that's true. But if you have like a mana rock.
Yeah. Anyway. But sometimes you'll see red for usually just wheel, but I think I've seen it for what else was it? There was something else I saw in red. I can't remember what it is.
In Ash's list, he's playing Song of Creation,
Yeah, I'm trying out Song of Creation.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's definitely not going to be something that you'll traditionally see in a Paradox deck.
I've never tried it, but it looked interesting.
Yeah.
And once I finish this thought, I'll explain why I'm trying it out.
Cool.
But the other reason you'll go into another color, and that color is white, is you get a couple key things. Namely, you get Wargate. That's the top reason to be in white.
It's the main reason.
It is a catch-all tutor. It can find you just about anything you need, and your deck is really good at making the mana to do so.
Yeah, Wargate for 0, really good in this deck. Just get Academy.
Yeah, it's insane. A couple other things I'm playing white for is some removal. I before I cleaned up the list a little bit, I was on Swords of Plowshares, and Nicholas roasted me for it, which
I did.
Fair. It's very uncommon to see Swords of Plowshares played in these style decks, but I was kind of trying it out, and then maybe not, but whatever.
Yeah, don't put swords in your deck, please.
Enlightened Tutor is another big reason to be in it in this color. Savine's Reclamation, I am a huge proponent of this card. It's really good at getting back stuff that your opponents have removed, or maybe something that you've milled with your Codex Shredder, or discarded to Wheel of Fortune. It can get back some key stuff.
I like it a little bit less in Paradox decks, but there's nothing wrong with playing it for sure, and it will definitely be good in some games.
Yeah. Then 2 more cards that I'm in white for is Endless Detour, which is a new card out of New Capenna. It costs Bant, and it says, it's an instant. It says the owner of target spell, non-land permanent, or card in a graveyard puts it on the top or bottom of their library. So the reason I really wanted to try this card out, and I've never played it before, it just seemed like it would go good in this deck, is because it's kind of a really versatile piece of interaction that can also be used while you're trying to combo off. And by that I mean you can use it to regrow something, whether that be a permanent you need, or your Wheel of Fortune, or a combo piece.
Jar.
What?
I said like a memory jar, or just whatever you need back on top.
Memory jar. So it could do that, but you could also use it to like basically memory lapse them. If they're trying to counter your spell, you can use this as, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's kind of an expensive counter spell in this kind of deck, but you could do it. Or you could use it to like try and get rid of a Collector Oof, especially like in response to a fetch land or something. So it just seemed very versatile, so I wanted to give it a try. And then we talked about this like last episode, I think, but there's also a portable hole in this deck, which is a tutorable way to remove a Collector Oof.
In case you haven't noticed the common theme, a lot of cards have been included purely because Collector Oof exists now. And it is worth noting, Ash is on probably a much more control-heavy version of Paradox Academy, which is still like a super like even his list is still a super dedicated combo deck, but he's probably as deep into control as he could reasonably be.
Yeah, and actually, I do have a comment about that. Oh, sorry, were you done?
I mean, for the most part, yeah.
So I do have a comment about that, which is, oftentimes when people, if you're building this deck and you cannot play both Soul Ring and Mana Crypt, the decision on which one you play usually comes down to how aggressive your metagame is and how control-y your build is. But, and if anyone's looking at my list, you'll see I do not have Soul Ring, but I do have Mana Crypt, which usually if you're playing a more controlling build, you're going to be on Soul Ring just because you're looking to let the game go a couple turns longer, and that extra couple points of damage could really add up. But even in a slightly more controlling build, because of our fast metagame, I'm looking to end the game faster, and I'm still a dedicated combo deck, so I'm okay going with the Crypt.
Yeah, and I think
try and get out faster shots. And to be clear, it might be correct to be on Soul Ring. I just have to try it out.
Yeah, I think, which we'll talk about this more, I guess, when we talk about point spreads, but I think one of the big reasons to be on Crypt, too, is, I guess it's kind of a fringe situation, but not that uncommon, where you have, like, land Mana Crypt in your hand, and you can go land Mana Crypt, Talisman, or, like, Signet, or whatever. because you can't do that with Soul Ring, which is a small thing, but it can really matter.
Yeah, I mean, Mana Crypt starts can really help just rocket you into, like, Mana Crypt starts are usually the way that you're going to end up getting an academy in play really fast that's actually tapping for a good amount of mana.
Yeah. And like a really fast... Really, if you have a Mana Crypt start, you're usually set up pretty well to win that game.
Yeah, it's really weird because, like, everyone has played against a Soul Ring start and knows how blisteringly fast it is. But, like, the difference between a Soul Ring start and a Crypt start in this deck in particular is, like, insane.
Yeah. Honestly, I've tried builds with Soul Ring and Mana Crypt as my point spread. Which
Can confirm.
I think it's harder now, because they're both 4 points. But this is one of those decks where when you have a fast start, it just feels like broken, and then when you have like that really awkward start with like only card draw in your hand, you're like, man, this deck is bad. It's kind of like a feast or famine type deal.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that way back when you could play Mana Crypt and Soul Ring for a grand total of 5 points.
Yeah, back in those days, I believe crop rotation was 0 points.
It was.
So
and I think Tinker was 4 points.
I think Tinker was 4. But still,
now
like,
it's 3.
You could be on Tinker, Crypt, Ring, and Academy as your point spread, and be playing crop rotation. Those were the days.
That's ridiculous.
Now you cannot do that.
Yeah, I think that might have been before Paradox Engine was printed, though. Yeah.
No, it was. Oh. I think somewhat shortly after Paradox Engine was printed, it got bumped up. But I think it was around for like a little while after Paradox Engine got printed.
Huh. Well, anyway, I guess we're kind of already talking about points now. You want to talk about a couple different legitimate point spreads?
Yeah, so there are a lot of possible point spreads for this deck.
Actually, you know what we should do? We should just start listing the cards that are like legit options. Like not even like spreads, but just like pointed cards.
Yeah.
That see play in the deck.
Alright, pointed cards that see play in the deck. Transmute Artifact, Tolarian Academy, Tinker.
Soul Ring. Mana Crypt. Mana Vault.
Moxen are sometimes thrown in there, but not.
They're rare.
Yeah, Mana Vault, Crop Rotation.
I have played builds that go off with Fast Bond. Do not suggest it.
Yeah. You could be on like Intuition or Gifts Ungiven, but probably not. I'd say like a normal point spread. Me and Ash actually have the exact same point spread in our lists, which is by no means the only point spread.
It's just the one that we happen to like.
Yeah. But like I said, even when there were 4 points, I've played like Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Academy, but I think that was before crop rotation got printed. Or, I mean, not printed, but pointed. There's like you could...
Did we already say transmute?
Yeah, I said that. You could, swapping out crop rotation for transmute artifact and the point spreads that we have would be perfectly reasonable. It really just kind of depends on what you're going for, but there's not really a wrong point spread. I mean, I guess like if you're on Flash and like Merchant Scroll is your only points, maybe don't be doing that. But
yeah, you definitely want to be playing Academy and some fast mana in your spread.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not playing Academy, then the deck isn't Paradox Academy anymore. Which, I mean, you could play Academy list Paradox, but I don't know.
I would not suggest that.
I wouldn't recommend it. Academy is very good.
Hard agree. Why don't we spend our points on tutors?
I mean, we do.
Like, I mean, why don't we like splash black and play like black tutors?
Oh, because your points can't afford it. Like there's no reason to splash black and throw in black tutors when you already are trying to figure out how you can cut down your points when you're not in black. Like it's just better to have the fast mana and the blue artifact tutors over like demonic tutor, vampiric tutor. Like Wishclaw Talisman, I guess an argument could be made, but still, like, you're just already like struggling to get down to 10 points, so there's no reason to.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. What you want to talk a little bit about, like how this deck fits in metagames?
Yeah, so me and Ash were kind of actually talking about this before we started recording, and this is one of those decks where, like, don't get me wrong, it has good matchups and bad matchups, but for the most part, like, it's kind of like a feast or famine type thing. Like, none of the matchups are unwinnable, and none of the matchups are unlosable. It just kind of depends on, like, your hands. But
also, I want to add to that, pilot skill is extremely important in a deck like this.
Yeah, I mean, say as with any like really dedicated combo deck, the better you know the deck, the better it's going to perform.
Yeah, for sure. It also gives you like I think one of the most difficult parts about playing this deck is mulligan decisions.
Yes, definitely.
And that's a lot. That's saying a lot, seeing as how complicated these board states get and sequencing is.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say one of this deck's biggest struggles is that I would say the hardest part of, like, this, as far as dedicated combo decks go, don't get me wrong, this is still very difficult, but I think this is one of the easier dedicated combo decks to play, but I think it is one of the harder dedicated combo decks to build, because the like the ratio to ramp to card draw has to be like so precise, because you get those really awkward hands where you draw either all ramp and nothing to do with it, or all like card draw and no way to play it. So like the deck building process for this deck is extremely important. Getting that right kind of ratio, which neither one of me and Ash's lists are super finely tuned, so both of us probably would, if we wanted to completely optimize these lists, we would have to do a little bit of tinkering with it.
We'd probably have to play it like for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, but we've both played the deck enough that both of our lists are probably pretty good, like guidelines.
Yeah.
To sort of where you want to be.
I would agree with that. I will say another reason this deck is kind of hard to build for a lot of people is just a lot of random, like, expensive cards that you wouldn't have for any other reason. In this deck, like most people don't just have a memory jar.
Yeah.
You know, or like, I mean, wheel is like kind of, people have that one, but like most people don't have a retrofitter foundry, which you're not playing, but like,
yeah, I'm not on that, but
most people don't have a Tolarian Academy because it's not legal anywhere besides here. So, also, most versions of this deck in their like most optimal state would probably play a Mishra's Factory.
Also,
sorry, Mishra's Workshop.
Yeah, also a Candelabra of Tanos. I guess, yeah, we should address that. Neither one of us own a Workshop or a Candelabra, which would both certainly be in this deck.
Yes.
And I guess we should probably, yeah, those are both really, really important key cards that if you have access to them, you should play them.
That being said, Nicholas and I we both have a lot of reps on this deck over the years and have never touched either of those cards and have both seen pretty good degrees of success without them.
Yeah, the deck is can really work strong without them.
It's better with them. You get more combos. Candelabra combos with the ham sandwich.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of Candelabra combos in this deck.
Okay, but now we talked about how there's not really any auto win or auto lose matchups, but the hardest matchups, in my opinion, are the ones that they're going to be presenting a threat, like threats to the board. They're going to be presented creatures to be attacking you with. But then they are also good at acquiring and casting Collector Oof. We talked about this a bunch already, but Collector Oof is like the way you lose a lot of games.
Yeah. It's
go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say the worst matchup for this deck is like creature toolbox combo decks. I mean, I guess specifically they have to be playing Collector Oof. But
which most of them do.
Most of them do. And there is just no worse feeling than knowing that your opponent is on Collector Oof and like 10 different tutors to find Collector Oof, and you're just like sitting there knowing that you like can't beat it, which there have been like cards, more cards printed that like can reasonably put in this deck that beat Collector Oof, which are really nice. And I'm not playing a lot of them in my list, and I definitely should be. But like Portable Hole is one of the options that we were talking about. If you're like wanting to kind of do like the more interactive stuff, Endless Detour is good. Oko, and just like different things like that especially like the artifact based ones. There was one more, Moonsnare Prototype, artifacts that you can use your tutors for to get rid of a Collector Oof.
Hashtag feels good, man.
Yeah, they're like in today's like in the format today, you basically need to be playing at least some ways to deal with Collector Oof, because it just shuts down everything that you're trying to do.
Yeah, and we did briefly talk about how to beat Collector Oof. I'm sorry, not how to beat it, but like how you did beat Collector Oof in our when you were playing Paradox Academy on camera. You used an Ottawa, the Soaring City, I believe, correct?
I did.
To bounce it, and then,
yeah,
because you spent your turns setting up as best you could, so once you removed it, you could win immediately, and then you removed it and then won immediately.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We've talked about this with every combo deck that we've talked about, and we're going to keep talking about it because it is so important not only to know this as a combo player, but to know this as someone that's not playing combo, that to beat combo, you don't just need threats or just need interaction, you need both. If you just play a Collector Oof and it just sits there, they still are going to set up their board, and then once they deal with it, they're just going to win. So you can't just be like, all right, I got a Collector Oof, now I can sit back and do nothing. You need to have pressure behind that Collector Oof. And same goes with like counter spells or whatever. You need to have some way to pressure the combo deck, or they're just going to still end up winning.
Yeah, I think of I didn't used to, and it was kind of I lost because of it. But I think of Collector Oof or Opposition Agent, Aven Mind Sensor, stuff like that. I think of it not as a it's not a wall they can't pass. It's a speed bump that they have to take their time with. And once they, like, it gives you a window of opportunity to kill them. And if you don't, in that time that it gives you, you're probably going to lose the game. So you have to utilize the time that card gives you as best you possibly can. Yeah.
Which, that being said, if there was a card that you could just play and sit behind it forever, Collector Oof is going to be that one. But like we were talking about, there are ways for the deck to deal with it, and once they set up and then find one of those ways, you better be ready.
And if they're a good Paradox player, there's a pretty high chance that they're going to find out that you're on Oof, and then they're going to keep hands based on dealing with it.
Yeah, or even if they like have some sort of removal or something, they're going to hold on to it until they see that Oof, and then just kill it immediately.
Would agree. Okay. I think we've. By the way, if anyone, I mean, this seems like a little late to be saying this. If you don't know what Collector Oof does, it is 1 and a green for a 2/2 that says activated abilities of artifacts cannot be activated. So it shuts down your entire deck, including but not limited to like 4 or 5 cards in your land base.
Yeah. There's There have been so many times where I'll be like sitting there with like a tree of tails on the battlefield, and they'll just like play a collector roof, and I'm like, all right, I can't tap any of my artifacts like for mana, but I'll tap my lands, and I'll try to like tap 5 lands to play something. They're like, yeah, that's an artifact.
You live by the artifact count, and you die by the artifact count.
Yeah, fun story. Kind of going off track a little bit. Back in my was worse at Magic days. That
2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, exactly. No, this was a while ago. But I was playing Bant ETB, and this was like right after Collector Roof got printed. Like literally like a couple of weeks after it became legal. I was playing Bant ETB, and in my Bant ETB list, I was playing Enlightened Tutor to get, mostly to get Birthing Pod. And
GT, right?
Yeah, and like I was on like Swords and GT and stuff like that. But the point was I was playing Enlightened Tutor, and during my deck building process, I thought to myself, you know what? There's 0 Blood Moons in our meta right now. This was when we had a much smaller player base and a much less diverse meta, and you pretty much knew exactly what you were going to be going up against every week. And so I was like, I'm going to put in a couple of the artifact lands, so that if I need to, I can Enlighten Tutor for them. And then I show up to I show up like an hour early. Me and Ash are like talking and stuff, and he was on this. Actually, we talked about this during our tier list. He was on this crappy
Greedy Jiki.
No. You were on Lantern Control, like prison stuff. You were just like on like all bad. Of these artifact lock pieces, but you saw that I was
playing. Deck is so bad.
You saw that I was playing Bant ETB, and you were like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna go get that artifact that shuts off ETB effects.
Torpor Orb.
And I was like, fine, if you're doing that, I'm gonna go put a Collector Roof in my deck. And I played the entire tournament with this Collector Roof and had 0 problems. And then later looked at my list, and I was on like Soul Ring, Birthing Pod, Aether Vial, like 3 artifact lands, Swords, GT, and I was like, I cannot believe I didn't get burned by this Collector Roof. But
better to be lucky than good.
Exactly. Maybe don't do that. That was a really long tangent for no reason. But funny story about something that I did that I should not have done.
Truly beautiful. Do you have any more comments about Paradox, or are you ready to move on to our closing segment here? I think this might be the first time in a hot minute we're like moving to the closing segment before the 50-minute mark.
Yeah, honestly, I'm like kind of impressed. I think like for good and bad matchups, it's kind of hard to gauge because it's kind of feast or famine. I'd say like a lot of it kind of depends on the builds too. Like with control decks, I'd say like blue-white control is probably a pretty good matchup because they have a lot of creature interaction that doesn't do anything. And Grixis control might be a little tougher because they have things like Abrade, Kolaghan's Command, maybe even Fiery Confluence. So it kind of just comes down to your opponent's deck and your deck and how they interact with each other. But I think we can go on to our closing segment.
Oh, quick! I do want to add one little thing. Narset Parter of Veils is really good in this deck because it helps you. Almost every card in your deck, besides your lands, can get hit by it. And then you play so many wheels that sometimes you just Narset wheel someone.
Yeah, that's a real win condition.
That's fun. Also, this is the only deck ever that just casts Fair Upheaval. Well, Fair is
yeah.
You cast Upheaval, and then you float a bunch of mana, and then you cast Upheaval, and you put all your cards back into play.
There are few better feelings than like casting an Upheaval with 20 mana floating, and just like your opponent being like, well, I can't really do anything about that. Sometimes you do that and lose though. In our 4-man mini tournament that we recorded, I think I did that like twice against.
Dude, have you ever cast Upheaval and it been a ritual? That feels good.
I don't actually know if I have.
You like float a bunch of mana, but like the artifacts you have and what they cost lines up, so you you get, like, if you haven't played a land, you upheaval, play all the stuff back down, and then play your Academy untapped and float a ton of mana, and you, like, go net positive.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a truly beautiful thing. Okay, anyway, we'll talk now a bit about what we played last week. Nicholas, I know you've been pretty excited about this new brew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, do you want to end on that, or do you want me to start and then you end on that?
Sure.
So what I played last week is Abzan Midrange. I just kind of re-listened to the last episode, and we talked about Jonathan Abzan like half the episode, and I was like, I want to play Abzan again. So I built Abzan. This one was actually a slightly lower on the curve than my average Abzan builds, but it's still a decent number of 4s, 5s, and 6s. You know, like I was still ramping and going up the curve. I was playing a decent number of dorks too. And I was on Soul Ring as part of my point spread. Round 1, I go up against Matt's Naya midrange. We had been playing before, and I pretty much just kind of go burr. It works out pretty well. Nothing too exciting. Game 2, I just kind of got stomped out of absolutely nowhere. Like, it felt like I was doing good things. He was just, like, one step ahead every time, and I was like, oh, okay. Ancient Tomb really helped with that, oddly enough. But I ended up getting there at the end. He did have to mulligan into Oblivion one game, unfortunately. Round 2, I went up against... Who did I go up against? Oh, I went up against that player who's playing red-black aggro. And game 1, I drew Kalitas, Courser of Krufix, Elder Gargaroth, and something else that gains me life. And I just gained just an embarrassing amount of life. It just was not fair at all. And then game 2, I died. And then game 3, I just kind of did the same thing. I just kind of ramped into big stuff, and my opponent just died. And then I think round 3 I split.
I think we played 4 rounds last Tuesday.
Oh, then I guess round 4 I split. I don't remember who I played against round 3 then. I think I ended up 3-1 or 2-1-1 maybe.
I think you... Yeah, that sounds right, because I know you left right before the last match, but I think you probably split.
I went up against Ty. No, I went up against Ty round 3 and died.
And then split your last match?
Yeah, so I went 2-1-1.
Nice.
The deck felt really good.
Alright, am I good to talk about what I was playing?
Yes, please, go off.
Alright, so, this dates back to, 3 weeks ago. When we were talking about, we were doing our tier list, and we talked about Sultai Walk Pod, that the deck that used to exist and now because of points reasons isn't great anymore. And I was like, I wonder if there's a way to make that deck still reasonable. And so I envisioned Glory in the form of a 4-color deck, no red, with a point spread of Time Walk, Spellseeker, and something else. I'm on True Name.
Survival?
No, that's too many points.
Oh, wait. Time Walk, Spellseeker, +1. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish.
That's 7, 2, and 1.
Well, I mean, I would be playing Pod if I could play a 2-pointed card, but I can't.
Fair.
But so the theory behind this being Sultai Walk Pod isn't great anymore because you can't play Pod, and that deck was part of the reason that deck was so good was because you could play Spellseeker, Time Walk, and Pod. But now that the point spread is so awkward, you can't play Pod. But the problem with still playing this deck in Sultai is that you don't get Ephemerate, and Ephemerate is very important now if you're playing Spellseeker and Time Walk in the same deck. But you also can't go Bant. Well, you could, but going into black gets you Recurring Nightmare and Marin and stuff like that. So basically, I built this like big pile of like time walk shenanigans, where you're like it's kind of in the same. It's like a creature combo deck, but your combos all take the form of taking infinite turns. And some of the ways that you do this are with you can do it pretty easily with like Soul Herder and Eternal Witness. And obviously you have the Spellseeker line where you go Spellseeker, Ephemerate into Time Walk, play Time Walk. Next turn, Ephemerate the Spellseeker to go get Neoform Spellseeker into either Archaeomancer or the 4-mana Eternal Witness. And then from there, you have a loop of getting back Ephemerating the Eternal Witness, getting back Time Walk, and just continuing to do that. And then there's like, but then one of the other ways, or two of the other ways, Recurring Nightmare is one of the big combo, or big cards in the deck, where you just, first of all, there's just a lot of fair things that you can do. Well, fairish things that you can do with Recurring Nightmare, because you're on a lot of creatures with ETB effects. Like Palace Jailer, Custody Lich, Thrag.
What about Mr. Moo?
What?
Moo, Siege Rhino.
Oh, yeah, I'm also on Siege Rhino. Which, with a Recurring
Moo.
Nightmare is... Yes, Rhino's Moo, apparently. Yeah, did you like really expect me? You're like, oh, Moo, yeah, of course. Nicholas is gonna know what Moo means when I'm talking about a Rhino.
There's a friend of mine who, back when Abzan was like a thing in Modern, he always just said Moo. It was funny. I'm going to his wedding in a couple months.
Hey, that's exciting.
Yeah. Congratulations. Not you. I just didn't want to say his name without.
Yeah.
Just keep talking.
All right, whatever. Yeah, so you're doing like a lot of Recurring Nightmare shenanigans, and then you also have Marin and sack outlets. Oh, and I guess the way that these win is if you have like Recurring Nightmare and Eternal Witness, or Eternal Witness and another Witness, it makes it a lot easier. With a Time Walk in the graveyard, you can take infinite turns that way, given enough mana. Or with Marin and a sack outlet, you can take infinite turns that way using Eternal Witnesses and Time Walks. And we might talk about this deck more later. I'm not sure. But I've played it 2 weeks in a row, and it has felt really good both weeks. And even though I don't need to, I'm going to talk about both weeks because I'm really excited about this new deck. So week 1, I think we were also on 4 rounds, and I went 3-1. Or maybe... Yeah, no, I went 3-1. I don't actually remember...
Nick.
What?
I have an idea to help us improve this podcast.
Okay.
What if we write down our match results in our phones after every time we play at an event, so we can remember and talk about it better?
Yeah, we definitely need to do that.
Thank you, everyone, for being patient with us up to this point.
Next episode, we will probably have better recaps of our previous weeks. But to be fair, this was 2 weeks ago. All I remember is that the deck felt really, really good. And the match that I lost in that week still felt like really close. Like, it didn't seem like, oh, this deck just doesn't do anything. It's like, oh, if this game had gone differently, I still could have won. But then this past week, I think match 1, I was against Seth on Rock, and I think that's a pretty good matchup for me, just because I think my deck just like grinds pretty hard, and so I ended up getting that 2-0, and then my second match, I think I was against Lands. And I also got there on that one. Yeah, I think it was... I got that one 2-0 as well. Game 1, it was actually pretty close. It was kind of like a back and forth. And I ended up getting there. And then game 2, he kind of got mana screwed and couldn't really do much. And I just kind of went too fast. And then I lost my next 2 matchups, but both of them felt really, really close. My next matchup, I don't remember exactly what the deck was, to be honest. But it was, I lost 1-2, but all 3 games just felt like really close. Like it felt like it could have gone either way. And I just kind of got a little, like, he just had just enough interaction to keep me off of like doing enough to win. And then match 4, I was against Blue-White Control. And if you know me, you know that I hate humility with a burning passion. There is not a Magic card that I despise more. And he was on
Wait,
humility.
the creature combo player doesn't like the card Humility?
Yeah, I played a lot of creature combo, and humility, like, it's just so, like, demoralizing. It's like, I don't want to concede because, like, I can possibly still win, but in your heart of hearts, you know that it's over the second that they land their humility. So game 1, I lost to humility, and it was a very humbling experience. I'm just kidding. Ignore that. And then game 2, I went turn 1 land birds. He went turn 1 marsh flats, and then I went turn 2 marsh flats pass, and he says, all right, in step I will fetch, and I say, all right, I respond and I fetch, and then played an opposition agent, and he looked down at his hand of 1 other lands and all like 3 drops and was like, all right, I concede. So I got a cheeky win game 2 with an opposition agent. And then
Cards shouldn't exist.
Oh my goodness, opposition agent is like, so it's almost as demoralizing as humility. And then game 3, it was a really, really close back and forth. But he got off 2 recalls. No. Okay, that was game 1. So part of the reason I lost game 1 was because he got off 2 recalls and then landed a humility. And then game 3, he got an early Monastery Mentor on the battlefield, and then assembled Cryptic Command and
Mystic
Sanctuary. And I think he also got 2 recalls this game as well. Maybe not, but either way, he had Monastery Mentor and Cryptic Command and Mystic Sanctuary. So there really just wasn't much that I could do. I mean, I had a Custodial Lich and a Palace Jailer, and a window of opportunity in which to try to get through, but he had just enough interaction. And then I died to Monastery Mentor.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Hopefully, I'm still tuning this list. There are definitely some cards that need to be changed. But hopefully once I get this brew to a place that I like it, which I'm already loving it. I think it's actually really good. But I think once I get a really attuned list, I might play it in a 4-man or something so people can kind of see what it's about.
You can show it off a little bit. It really does make sense also because a lot of the decks that you've really quite liked have been creature decks that have something that your opponents have to respect, and then when they try to do so, you just attack them. And this is just another deck in that lineup, I feel like.
Yeah, it's also 2 of my favorite cards in all of Magic the Gathering are Recurring Nightmare and Time Walk, and I get to play both of them. If I could throw a Birthing Pod in this deck, I would probably never play anything else ever again. But
yeah, that's 11 points though.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's too many points. So
Nicholas's eyes
are on the glory.
Nicholas's eyes are always in the points list, waiting for one of those cards to go down so he can just run the tables.
The day that they, for some reason, decide to make Birthing Pod 1 point is the day.
I was more thinking walk to 6, but
yeah, I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. But that would be amazing. I think like maybe more reasonable would be Spellseeker back to 1.
True. Now, what... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to finish my thought by saying or something along those lines, but I guess it wasn't a necessary statement.
Okay. Now, just... I mean, we'll go more into this in a future episode, I imagine. But just, like, off the top of your head right now, how essential is Time Walk itself?
To this deck?
Yeah, to the list.
The way that I have it built, it is the core card in the deck.
Okay, so like this isn't really going to be the most accessible deck list?
Correct. I mean, the deck could be built to be just a toolbox, like a 4-color toolbox, like Recurring Nightmare Shenanigans kind of deck, but the list would look significantly different. Yeah, honestly, there's not really a good comparison. The deck like would be fun, but it would definitely look a lot different than this current list, because this list is built around taking infinite turns but there's also just like a really big like synergy of like toolbox creatures and like recurring them and blinking them and stuff like that.
You heard it here first, folks. If you're not as rich as Nicholas, you can't play fun decks.
Or if you just didn't get your Time Walk early enough. I got mine before it got... I mean, it was already fairly expensive, but now it is much more expensive. So just build a time machine.
Well, just use your own Time Walk to go back. Wait. All right. Do you have any other closing comments?
I don't think so. Thanks for listening. We appreciate everybody that listens, and we will see you next time.
See you next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the 10 Points Podcast, and don't forget to count your points.